Okay. Oh, so he did awkward boy comedy. All right. Well, I guess Gabriel Gundacker is the topic for today. I came across a TikTok. I'll show you in a second. I'm just looking through this guy's TikTok. I guess he was a famous Viner at some point, and he has a song. They all make songs. I don't really get it. He's got like 111,000 on here on Instagram and like 60K. He'd say, oh, almost 69K. Hey, Pogger's number. On YouTube, but
brain thinking about the time
I came across this TikTok here of this person. Well, we'll just listen to it.
just racking my brain thinking about the time I first moved to LA and I ended up meeting a very popular Vine star.
Just subscribed.
Thank you so much for the sub. Sorry about that.
A very popular Vine star. His name rhymes with Gabriel Gundacker.
Isn't that his name, Gabriel Gundacker? Like what? Okay.
And during our first intimate experience, I'm
assuming that since they said first, there were multiple intimate experiences.
I'm performing my oral craft, and he keeps pushing my head further down and further down, towards the place of no return, towards the place where you empty.
Okay, I'm assuming she's talking about his butthole.
About 48 hours after you enter, if you know what if you can catch my drift.
Very quirky, yes. I think we catch your drift.
And I'm like, oh, in my head I'm like, oh, this is happening right now. Yeah, this is happening. This is, wow, he really wants me to do this. And audibly he says, yeah. And so I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, let's jump right in. And so, yeah, let me rephrase. Thinking about the time I, anally fellatiated, Gabriel Gundacker on our first date.
Yeah, so, question. It sounds like, they were on a date, their first date, which means that there are multiple dates most likely, and, she was giving him a, an oral, you know what I'm saying. And then I guess he pushed her down to, lick his butt. Okay. The comments, or her comments, say there were way more victims coming forward, and their testimonies are on my Instagram story, which we'll probably take a look at. I'm telling the story because I realized it was super weird for a micro celebrity of almost 30 to do this to a 20-year-old. So we have to be honest here, first and foremost, because this is obviously an intense situation, and we're going to look at all the people coming forward in a second. We have to find her Instagram, so I'm going to have to go onto her thing. But one of the biggest... Here's the thing, because the next video here says, I can't tell if you're saying it was non-consensual or not. We have to understand this through the scope of a reasonable lens of consent. So... I understand that, well, first and foremost, we have to acknowledge that, a 20-year-old interacting with a 30-year-old, yeah, it's weird for the 30-year-old, but it's not predatory. It's legal. We make a reasonable assumption that if something was illegal, people wouldn't do it, but it's legal. I could think it's weird, but it doesn't contribute to, a predatory aspect. Are there power dynamics there? For sure. However, the biggest thing to focus on when it comes to consent, and this is something that she didn't express, is the feeling of the person, right? So... let me give you an example. Let's say they're in... It seems like what happened is in this scenario, they were engaging physically. He pushed her to do something quite literally, and then she did it. Now, there's two things that we'd have to ask. One, did you say, no, I don't want to do this? Or two, did you feel like if you said, no, I didn't want to do this, would you get hurt? Would you feel like if you would have said no, that you would have gotten hurt? Those are the two questions to ask. It's quite possible, but I'm going to assume that's not true because she said first date, leading us to believe that there were multiple dates. And also, she didn't seem to express any type of traumatic aspect. And we have to keep those two things in mind. Did you ask to stop, or did you feel like you would be hurt if you asked to stop? Those are two very important things, because this gets into a new age conversation, which is something that we need to talk about, is making sure, and this is usually when it comes from men to women, but this is something that everybody should keep in mind, but making sure that you allow the person that you're engaging with to feel comfortable saying no without any fear or risk of harm. That's very important. Now, of course, she could have been like, well, I feel like if I didn't do it, he wouldn't have been, been my boyfriend. that's not a risk to your life, so I don't consider that a factor of like, oh my god, they're gonna, that's some kind of lack of consent. If you do something for somebody because you want them to like you, that's really you doing something that you shouldn't do. Like, you're being a little immature. I understand that a big celebrity, you'd want to impress them more, but I'm more worried about like body autonomy. Did they feel like did they feel like they might have gotten hurt if they didn't engage? That's where I'm coming from more than anything else. And so this doesn't seem to exist whatsoever. Now, it doesn't seem that he asked for this type of engagement, which is obviously a little gross. But again, I don't see any predatory aspect. I just see a little bit of a weird aspect. Now, I have to go and I have to look up her Instagram really quick, but I'm going to play the next video. It says, I can't tell if you're saying it was consensual or not.
That's the thing about stuff like this, right? Like, that's why things like this are so weird. I'm not saying he's a predator, but I'm saying he's weird. And I've heard that he's done very similar things.
Well, so we have to acknowledge that the word weird doesn't mean predator in any capacity. Like, we can't just say like, hey, maybe something happened because it's weird. It's like, okay, that can be weird, but something being weird doesn't mean that it's some kind of predatory action. So far from what we've seen, we haven't seen anything predatory. We've just seen a weird interaction.
Just like me. So
it seems like she's trying to draw a parallel to it being non-consensual without her expressly saying it. Somebody in the facts of the power dynamic sometimes outweighs logical thought when it comes to whether or not young people especially would feel. It doesn't. So I need you to understand that it doesn't really matter if power dynamics outweighs logical thought, right? I need you to understand this. Let's say that like somebody's a big celebrity and you want to engage with them, and you'll do whatever they want you to do within reason to engage with them, like outside of like hurting yourself. That is your lack of like that's a you issue. Now, if you feel harmed or threatened, that's a different scenario, right? So you wanting to engage with me and being like, oh, I'm going to be extra nice to Papa and I'll let him do whatever, or a couple of different things, like I'll let him be a lazy fucking piece of shit and just like sit and take shits all day and not have to clean or anything. That's the dynamic that we've established because I'm a celebrity, right? Which I wouldn't do. I already have my fiance and my love of my life. However, if we're in an intimate scenario where I set up a stage that you don't feel comfortable saying no in, or you feel like you're going to get hurt, then we get into the non-consensual aspect. Because I feel that it is the responsibility of the power partner, the partner with the power dynamic, to make sure that they set the stage for the other person engaging with them to feel 100% comfortable with saying, no, I don't want to do a particular thing. That's more important. You doing something that you may not want to do because you like somebody a lot isn't some kind of invasion of yourself. Doing something because you feel like you'll be threatened or hurt if you don't do it, that's different. And we have to keep that in general. Okay? I mean, we have to keep that in mind, excuse me.
It's hard because I don't feel especially traumatized, but I understand that was something that was done to me.
Well, I don't like the language here because they don't feel traumatized, which means that it was a willing engagement. Like, and I think that what this person is doing is they announce this situation, then they're saying, well, I'm not traumatized, but it wasn't right. And then they're saying that there are other people with similar experiences that we have to look into. We need to look into those people. But so far, this seems like she's really just trying to go out of her way to like generate some kind of clout.
If that makes sense. And then the behavior afterwards was also very weird.
What was it?
And I don't want this to be like, this is my story sort of thing. It was overall just like kind of a funny experience. Funny to me.
What happened afterwards?
Uncomfortable. And
okay.
I feel like I can say my truth if I want to.
It's fine to say your truth. It just feels like she's hamming it up, honestly. She's really hamming it up. Because she even said that she doesn't feel like she has any trauma. And it's like, so then why are you trying to make it feel that way when your communication to us as much as possible? This is before I knew he was a predator, finding out about an hour after this. Okay, so we have to find out what the other stories are and what like the predatory actions are. But so far, it's just a guy that likes his butt eaten out, and it's a little weird. All right, so I'm not sure if this is what they posted on Instagram. I'm gonna go look on Instagram. It might be, and I'm gonna read into it. Victimhood. Okay, it looks like we found... So this is on Instagram, but I think that this is just the front page. So we're going to watch the Instagram story. So this is about the Gabriel Gundacker thing. Can we pause this? Okay. I think this is the same thing. Okay. So it says, upon women from other corners of the internet, from Chicago and New York, Florida, and LA, I've learned so much about the patterns of Gabriel now. Consider this to be a serious problem. The average age of these women are 17 to 22. Now, if he was... I don't know how old he was at the time, but when was Vine big? Like 5 years ago? So he would have been like 25 because he's 30. So 25 and 17 is very inappropriate. The average age of these women are 17 to 22. I hope they come forward, but it can be daunting, obviously. I never thought I'd be this person. After tonight, it's been confirmed this man is a serial predator. That's a heavy accusation. We'll have to look into that. From getting women too intoxicated or using his charm, and notoriety to sleep with young fans. Okay, so we have to understand, obviously, intentionally getting somebody intoxicated to lower their inhibitions is disgusting. However, there is like a scenario, if you guys go to a bar together and both get drunk, it's different from intentionally getting... You'd have to prove that they were intentionally trying to get you drunk to lower your inhibitions. Using your charm is irrelevant. I mean, like, you having the ability to be charming isn't like a predatory. You can use your notoriety. You can abuse that power dynamic to sleep with young fans. The fans part is irrelevant. The age is all that matters with the young. And if somebody was 17, it's disgusting. But what we have to understand is there's a difference between saying, hey, I'm famous, do you want to sleep with me? And saying, hey, I'm famous, if you don't sleep with me, I'm going to ruin your life. Or if you do sleep with me, I'm going to platform you. You can't weaponize your power dynamic to gain things. That's where it becomes inappropriate. But the existence of that power dynamic makes you if that makes you like more appealing to people, like, okay, you know, like, think about it from a different perspective. Hey, I make let's say I made like $500,000 a year, and you made $40,000 a year. You know, would you feel like I have a power dynamic over you? Do you think that it's inappropriate for somebody with a lot of money to date somebody with not a lot of money? Probably not. I would say it's classist if you think there's a problem with it, because now you're saying everybody should just stay in their own lane. In multiple cities, the list goes on and on. Let me be clear. I was only 20. I had been abused before. Okay. Didn't know how to advocate for myself during intimacy. We've already looked at the situation, and like we said, she didn't feel uncomfortable based on what she had said, and she even went on a date with him again. It's really unfortunate that she's been abused before, and that's terrible. However, we can't claim that it's predatory based on this. And now, this is something that I've noticed happens a lot. People have an experience when they're younger, an experience that's very uncomfortable, and you can even call it cringy for themselves, that makes them feel like gross afterwards. But you feeling gross after you do something consensual doesn't make it non-consensual. We need to understand that. And this is coming straight from my fiance. Like, we've talked about this extensively. She's talked about like sexual experiences that she's had where she just felt uncomfortable afterward, and she was like, oh, yuck, and then she laughed and she cringes when she thinks about it. She also has other experiences that are not that, and I'm not going to get deep into it because it's not my place to do that. But we can't claim that everything is instantly some kind of a predatory interaction just because we're uncomfortable afterwards, right? Like, I've slept with people before that after... Listen, I've hooked up before with women that they looked much better online than they looked offline. And I've met up with them, and like, it was for expressly to have sex, and I've had sex with them because I felt bad going like, oh, no, thank you. That doesn't mean that like it was taken from me. I just felt bad and pressured. I didn't want them to feel bad, so I slept with them. But they didn't do anything wrong. You know what I mean? I just felt like they would feel like shit. You know? So I was like, all right, fuck it. That's an uncomfortable, cringy thing I think about sometimes, but that doesn't make it predatory in some capacity. You cringing afterwards and being... Because a lot of young people have really cringy experiences with dating. You know? It's just like... that doesn't make it some kind of an assault. And a lot of people in the chat are like, yeah, I've been there too. Yeah, we've all been there. I think, you know... So... My mouth was full. He never looked down at me to see if what he was doing was okay and didn't seem to care. He held me there until we finished. That was not our only intimate moment. The other times were odd, but I was so enthralled by someone older with a bigger platform than me that I allowed myself to block out what had happened. Okay, so now what she's saying is that now that this person really is giving me really uncomfortable vibes here, because what they expressed their story, that was like cringy. And now they're like, well, I blocked out some of the terrible parts now that people are coming forward. And it feels like a mimicking of the new age narrative of listening to victims, which is a good thing. But now it feels like she's mimicking that narrative and going like, well, I blocked some of it out. That does happen to people who have experienced really traumatic events. I would say it doesn't happen to people who don't experience really traumatic events. So like your original story was just like a haha, hee hee, like, oh, the story, but now it seems like you're getting attention for that story, and so you're really hamming it up for more attention. Because they got 500,000 views, and it does have an impact on somebody when you're like, oh, I got a lot of views. Oh, I got lots of views. Let me keep talking about this.
So
this is, I guess, her talking about it after the fact. Which I didn't see that yesterday. Later, he was extremely manipulative, telling me how great he thought I was, and how he didn't mean to sleep with and start a relationship with young girls, that it just happened that way. Well, you guys are in a consensual age range, and I don't think it's manipulative to say that he thought it was great to sleep with you. But basically what it sounds like he said is like, oh, I didn't mean to sleep with I didn't mean to fall for like a young 20-year-old girl and sleep with you. It just happened. It's probably some shitty fuckboy language, because he seems like a fuckboy, but that doesn't make it... And it actually might make it manipulative if he was lying about actually liking you, but that doesn't mean that it's predatory manipulative. That means that it's fuckboy loser shit. And almost forcing me to... Okay, with young girls. That it just happened that way, and almost forcing me to say it back to him like some sort of grooming ritual. Okay, so this person has really lost a lot of credibility. Because you can't groom a 20-year-old. This really screams to me like I think a lot. Okay, this is a very frustrating scenario, because grooming is a very serious thing that obviously this person doesn't understand. Grooming, first of all, this would apply to a young person below age of consent engaging with somebody that is age of consent, not within a reasonable age gap. So like a 30-year-old and a 13-year-old, or even like, I don't know. You could even say a 30-year-old and a 17-year-old. Maybe he did groom a 17-year-old because she mentioned 17, but we don't know. But grooming isn't just sleeping with somebody of a non-legal age range. It is also creating a physical and emotional dependence by cutting other people off in their support system. So she's loading this with a lot of morally loaded language to try to make it seem as bad as possible. And for me, this is where she loses all credibility in her story. Because that's a serious accusation. I know a lot of people have been truly groomed, and a lot of people come to me and talk to me, and they've expressed to me about it. And like, this isn't that. And I think it's really gross when somebody tries to take on the experiences, the traumatic experiences of another person, especially after they expressly say in their original video that none of this was traumatic in the first place, that it was just a weird thing. Keeping me at arm's length so I would keep... He took advantage of my naivety and multiple women's. Okay, but that's keeping you at arm's length. It sounds like he put you on the back burner, which people do. It's shitty, sure, but it's not predatory. And took advantage of my naivety. Yeah, like, you're young and you made a bad choice, but that doesn't make it predatory. I think this situation lies in a strange area of predatorization, or what is that? Okay. Area of predation? Victimhood. What? I think they're trying to say it's like some kind of predatory engagement. Let me look at that word just to be clear. Predation? Okay, yeah, it's basically predatory. The intimacy was consensual. Okay, so you can't say that there was predatory action if it was consensual. But the act inside it was not. That's not... Okay, nothing's less... This is one of those problems. I think everybody knows by now that I'm very... I like to think that I'm very educated when it comes to like these very sensitive topics. And this is just somebody who doesn't seem to be fully honest about it. I left feeling dirty and crying in my car on the way home, feeling stupid about how I couldn't advocate for myself. I feel like this could be true, but I feel like it's not true, and the reason is because we've gone through like multiple paragraphs of this person charging this situation wildly differently from the original situation. They said that it wasn't traumatic, that it was just weird. It was a laughable event, even, is what they said originally. Then afterwards, they said that they blocked things out. But if it's not a traumatic event, I don't see how you could block things out, right? You wouldn't have that traumatic trigger of blocking something out. This was a cringy event to you. It wasn't something that made you feel like it made you feel uncomfortable, but you didn't feel like you couldn't give accurate consent. And now it seems like they're morally loading on this. I think that it's really shitty. I couldn't advocate for myself, but still went on a few more dates. See, that's another thing too. If you really felt traumatized, I don't see why you would go on multiple dates. I understand that they're like a celebrity, so that you would want to do more for them. But if your logic is I want to do more for this person because they're so celebrity, and then like it seems like you're going beyond your normal capacity. That's true, but that doesn't make it predatory. You're making the conscious decision to do more than you want to do, or would normally have done because they're a celebrity and you want to keep them going. Let's see. Dates to prove... Okay, so they wanted a few more days to prove to themselves that I can make him like me more than just being used as a sex toy. I'm going to be honest. I don't think that she, even at the time, thought that she was being used as a sex toy. Her argument earlier on was that he was very manipulative and basically kept her on the back burner, which means that she probably thought that he actually liked her when he probably didn't like her, which is definitely shitty and manipulative, but not predatory. However, later on, she tries to say that she knew he never liked. This is the subtext of what she's saying here, because she says, like, oh, I want to prove to him I'm more than just a sex toy. Well, that means that, like, somehow that I feel that's contradictory, because now what you're saying is that you originally knew that it was never going to turn into anything and that you still engaged. I don't believe this. This feels like a story crafted after this situation happened because other people said, like, they may have had trauma, and we have to look into that after this. But, like, it seems like she had a fairly normal experience, cringy experience, like a lot of us have, and then people were like, oh, I was predatorized, which might be true, and now she's trying to turn her scenario into a scenario of predatorization in order to ride that social wave. It didn't work out because that's all he saw in me, because that's all he sees. Young, I haven't something to get this moment out of my head since it happened. I haven't been able to get this moment out of my head since it happened 2.5 years ago. But that doesn't make any sense to me, because she said that she blocked it all out, and now she's saying she couldn't have gotten it out of her head. So, like, you have to understand that this person, like, 2 paragraphs ago said that they blocked it all out because it was traumatic. Well, actually, they said they blocked it all out even though it wasn't traumatic. And now they're saying they couldn't get it out of their head. This doesn't make any sense. I think I ignored the significance as survival skill. No. Like I said, what did I say in the beginning? The necessary information is, did you say no, or did you feel like you would be hurt if you said no? Even now, you haven't expressed any way you felt like he would have hurt you if you had said no. I find it very invalidating to people who are really survivors, because this is trying to mirror and mimic what you guys, people have experienced, and load it into their situation. And I find it to be gross. Avoid this man intimately and consume his content under your own prerogatives. If somebody had assaulted me, I wouldn't say that you should consume his content, but okay. Alright, so this must be people reaching out about Gabe's friend. Okay, who cares? So this is about his friend. First of all, Cole and I matched when I was 18, he was 24, which isn't the worst, but it's okay. Listen, it's legal. I'm not gonna start like loading everything with like predatory fucking interactions. We started dating when I was 20 and he was 26. Okay, so you guys dated 2 days later, 2 years after you matched. He has a history of dating young girls too. That means nothing. They're consensual. He told me I look better skinny and always compared me to a child. What? And would say things like, I like how tiny you are. That dude. Okay. called me pure and innocent in regards to how I looked naked. We mostly had sex via FaceTime because long distance, and he would make me do things I physically couldn't, like really extreme things. One night I was telling him how I was sexually assaulted, and within minutes his dick was out and he was jerking off. He would constantly make rape jokes. He talked poorly of other women, constantly putting them down because of their looks, including the ones he had dated. He would ghost me, and then he would hit me up so I can make him come. He lied to the women he slept with after me about an STD he gave me. I thought that she said that they didn't sleep together. I thought they said they FaceTimed it. Okay, mostly, okay. I've heard of people he's close to that they think he's actually crazy. Okay, so he sounds a little gross, but it feels like a lot of the language is loaded to make him seem like a predator. He's engaging with a 20-year-old girl, which is consensual and legal age range, and then trying to make it seem like he was saying that she looked like a child and that turned him on. Okay. He would constantly tell me I can't be canceled after doing or saying something fucked up. I guess, well, the rape jokes are really obviously inappropriate and disgusting. And the only reason he kept things good between us after everything was so I kept quiet. He admitted that. Well, can you show us where he admitted that? So my thing is if he actively admitted that, wouldn't you be able to show us that? We need to hold these men accountable for their actions. So far, this is just like, I mean, like, this sounds gross, but it's hold them accountable for what? Please, any victims come forward. Another Gabriel. So that wasn't even Gabriel. That was his friend. Haha, yeah, it was so weird. I literally told all my friends how disturbing it was. And, like, I wouldn't sleep with him the first 2 times we went out. And then the third time he kept pouring the wine. Dude, same. Obviously, the head pushing thing was so, like, fucking weird. I did not feel good about it, dude. He's a creep. How is this man getting away with this? Literally, I'm glad you said something. All right, so this is the problem I have here. So they're saying that they went on 2 dates with him and they didn't sleep with him the first 2 times. And then he kept pouring wine. He might have tried to get that person drunk, but this is all what they're saying. This is their interpretation of the situation, or this is the worst interpretation that they could think of the situation to load it as much as possible. It's possible that I'm wrong about it, but what's weird is, like, did they just keep giving you wine, or did the 2 of them pour wine together? You guys went on 2 dates. It's not uncustomary for people to date 3 times and have sex. Like, there's a lot of factors here that we're not getting. They're also talking about how they thought it was really weird afterwards, which suggests to me that it wasn't traumatic. It's possible that a traumatic situation can happen and people don't realize it's traumatic until later in life. I do understand that. But the vibe I'm getting from this entire thing is trying to morally load every situation as much as possible to make it seem as bad as possible. Another victim. I've had an extremely emotional, abusive, manipulative relationship with him for about a year and on and off when I was 21 and he was 28, and similar repercussions as you in regards to the impact he's left on. Okay, 2.5 later. Okay. So they said that they had an extremely emotionally abusive, manipulative relationship with them for a year and a half on and off. I was like, okay, I could tend to believe that. But then they said that they had similar, repercussions as you in regards to the impact he left on me. I don't know if that's words being used right. But this girl is faking, not this girl in this message. The girl is, like, over-exaggerating her experience. So if you're saying you had a similar experience, like, I don't know. What happened? Another victim from Gabriel. Thank you for saying this. I would like to remain honest, but I had met up with Gabe when I was 18. We both got really drunk, even though I suspected I was getting way more drunk. I could barely stay awake. Okay, so if you suspected you were getting too drunk, why did you keep drinking? But also, like, obviously it's gross for an older man to give a young girl alcohol, so we're going to keep that factor in there. This guy's obviously disgusting for getting young girls drunk below the legal limit. And he kept trying to touch me and put his hands on my vagina. He kept calling me small and tiny and saying how sexy it was that I was small and how tight my vagina was. I was really drunk and don't remember much. I don't think we had sex, but I remember pushing him off me a bunch of times and then waking up really groggy in the morning. I told my friends, and they said that it was creepy, but probably wasn't anything crazy. I felt weird about it. Okay, so based on this one, I'm sorry this happened to you. You said you're 18. I was 18 in 2016, so he was 26. Okay, so obviously, I think that this one so far is the worst one because, like, the drunk thing from somebody that is not legally allowed to drink, or unless it was in a different country, I don't know. And the constantly trying to grope her is obviously disgusting and inappropriate. However, I will say, apparently they didn't even have sex, so he maintained a level of restraint. It's gross, but so far, I wouldn't call him a predator. I'd call him a scumbag. Hi, I didn't feel comfortable sharing my whole story on TikTok, but I'm replying to my comment that you replied to. I had very similar experience with him when I was a minor, and he was in his 20s. Okay. He was fully aware that I was a minor, but insisted on having intercourse regardless. I have spoken to a few others and had the experience, and not all of them were the age of the time. 17. As a 17-year-old, I didn't realize how wrong it was at the time, and now I look back. Okay, so this one is disgusting if it's true, and it feels so disgusting to describe. I never felt comfortable sharing my story until I seen your video. I'm not fully comfortable with what happened, but I want you to know that there is many other who have experienced this, and I'm so glad that you shared it. Okay, so this one feels accurate, and I'm going to tell you why. So, first of all, it seemed like she was probably 17, he was probably like in his like 26, right? Because 4 years ago, I think that was like the lowest age she would have been. Although I guess we don't know exactly when it happened. We'd have to figure out their age. So the one thing that makes me feel like this one would be true is the fact that they looked at it and they didn't see it as traumatic and didn't realize it was bad until afterwards. And that makes sense. Because we have to understand, this is like a conversation I've been having with Mama God a lot, that there is, there's obviously... You can't give consent when you're a minor to an adult that's not in an appropriate age range. So somebody that's like potentially 9 years older than you when you're 17 is not appropriate. So you were definitely violated. I believe it would be some kind of statutory assault. But there's a difference between, and I want you to hear me out, there's a difference between willingly and non-willingly engage. It's still some kind of a statutory scenario, like statutory rape, even if you do willingly engage with it. But I see a lot of people, and this is something that Mama God talks about, like when she was younger, she would willingly engage with older men, not physically, like, but they were like through like webcam shit. And she realized later it was disgusting and inappropriate, and it's a time in her life that she looks back and goes like, ew, yuck. And I think a lot of young women have that experience of going after older men. Now, it's obviously the older man's fault if something happens, but there's a difference between something where it's like they forced it from you versus like you did it willingly. And I only say that in the capacity of like how that would express from a traumatic perspective. It's still just morally and legally wrong, and that person's a scumfuck that needs to go to jail. But we understand that from the perspective of the girl, the way that the trauma expresses itself will be generally different. You obviously have a very much more instantaneous, much more heavy trauma if it's something that would be considered unwilling versus something that would be considered willing. Now, again, because of the age that you can't give your consent to somebody like that, but there is that willingness there, right? And that's generally what I'm trying to express. And that's why I feel like this seems accurate, because they're saying that they didn't realize it was bad until after, right? So they willingly engaged. It wasn't taken from them, but it's still non-consensual. So that makes sense to me. You get what I'm saying? Hey, just wanted to say I live in Orlando, where Gabe Gundacker is from, and he matched with me on Tinder, and literally like 6 of my friends were all 18 at the time. Okay, and he was 26. I guess not. That was weird, whatever. He absolutely tried to get with my friend, and she was so young, looking at 18. Okay, she was 18, I don't care, but they never ended up meeting up. Me and him really never spoke. Also, he super liked me when I was 18 years old. Okay, that doesn't matter. I don't care if you were 18 and he super liked you. He super liked me on Tinder when I was 18. Okay. You know what I find really interesting, though, is that, like, bro, they super liked you when you were 18 on Tinder. What do you want me to tell you? You're on a sex app. This is one of the ones that, like, diminishes the situation a bit. It's like, hey, I was 18 on Tinder, and he's super like, okay. I don't know what this says. I don't want to give too much something because my experience with Gabe was very specific, and I'm honestly still afraid of him and that people he is around, but I do want to say so much of what he has already been stated resonates with my experience. I dated Gabe in my early 20s for not too long. He made me feel crazy. Many of the things he said to me made me feel like he didn't like me as a person, but then at the end of the day, he still wanted to hook up. I was young, but the age difference wasn't incriminating. I notice a pattern here of people saying of really emphasizing the age, and it makes me uncomfortable. Because, like, the ages aren't... Like, this person was in their 20s when they dated Gabe in their 20s. So it's like, okay, he was probably older, but everybody hyper-focusing on the age of the other person, other than that 17-year-old girl, it seems uncomfortable. It seems more like they're trying to morally load the situation to make it seem worse than it actually is. He made me feel like he didn't want to hang out. I was young, but the age difference wasn't incriminating. The way he handled it, commenting on age, saying I was small, saying I was X years younger, was odd to me. I don't know who he was. I found it on a date and often wondered why I stayed on the first date, because he was so blatantly mean. I still do feel some need to take responsibility for that, and I beat myself up about it from time to time. Gabe acts like he is very politically informed and woke and good, but talking about how those things don't make you... Yeah, it sounds like, okay, that's a... It's somebody. They're saying that he's a fucking pretends to be politically woke and then takes advantage of girls, like, you know, other large content creators on YouTube with like reasonably large followings that will sexually harass like 2 girls, and then they'll say that it's one of them isn't mentally, you know, capable of consenting with him, and it's their fault, and that's society's fault, right? So it sounds like they're. What I will say is, if what they're saying is true, the pattern of like, oh, you look so young, that's definitely like weird and disgusting to try to date young people that are in age of consent, but saying that they look younger than they are. That's really weird. If it's true. I often wondered how he could talk about politics and feminism. What's weird is that this is the first conversation that we're seeing talking about politics. I often wondered how we could talk about politics and feminism and then treat me how he did, even if it was just casual dating. In my early 20s, I also... What does that mean? I also did not understand that casual relationships require the same amount of respect and consent that serious relationships do. Wait, what does that mean? You didn't understand that casual relationships require consent? Well, I don't understand. So what does that mean? He assaulted you non-consensually? What I'm not. I had come from a history of my own sexual trauma that was far more traumatic. So I compared a shitty guy to one that did it seem smaller. I wondered why something that wasn't outwardly illegal or violent felt so horrible. So what did he do? He was one of the worst men I ever spent time with life with, and I know firsthand that the people he surrounded himself with are equally horrible. There are other stories there, but I do not want to make myself identifiable. Just want to say thank you to all the women who have said something. And thank you, Clavender, for... Okay, so this one's... I don't know. I tend to believe this one. I just don't know what they mean by their language. Again, this is all speculative. We can't prove it. So, like, I'm not telling you that Gabriel Gundacker is a bad guy, but okay, he might have had kinks that were outside of like a comfortable realm. That doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't consensual. Her past traumas may have led her to believe that like something that she didn't want was more like something that she like. Honestly, her history of assault might have conditioned her to put up with things in bed that she normally wouldn't have if she had like a more like a healthier outlook on sex. So that's quite possible. And it's incredibly unfortunate. I messaged you on TikTok, but I'm sure you're getting flooded there. I first met up with Gabriel when I was 18 and a freshman in college. Okay, you were 18, he was 27. It's still weird, but again, it's fine. He lied to me about how many people he was seeing, and he gave me an STD. Made me feel guilty about it. Oh, that's disgusting. I think that's like a form of some kind of assault. Not telling you to somebody that you have an STD. Even though now it's obvious he was using many other girls. What is AFAB? Okay, AFAB I think is... I think AFAB is like... women that express themselves, or people assigned female at birth. Okay, so he was sleeping with trans men, or what? Other girls. The reason I say that is because you'll usually say when somebody identifies as trans, they'll say that they were assigned female at birth instead of that they were biological women because it's more sensitive. So, like, is that what the implications are? People in the same way. Hearing you say that hearing you say that he made you reassure him that he wasn't creepy made me my stomach turn because he did the same thing to me. He liked it when I would endearingly call him old man, which is nauseating now to think about, but he always made me reassure him that he wasn't weird for finding me attractive. Purely okay, so there seems to be, if these people are correct, there seems to be a pattern of him like having a thing for younger women but sleeping with women that are in a consensual age range. Okay, he knew I was 18 too and sent me with his debit card to get us a bottle of alcohol, but never gave me his PIN. Wait, how did you get alcohol if you were 18? I'm very confused. So, did they live in an area where it's legal to drink at 18? Yeah, the STD thing is disgusting. But did they live in an area where, like, 18 is okay to get alcohol? How do you get alcohol at 18? He gave me his credit card, bottle of alcohol, but never gave me his PIN, didn't answer the phone, so I ended up paying like $7 for a fucking bottle with my fake ID. Oh, okay, so she had fake ID with him. Okay, I see. Okay. I want to remain anonymous because Gabe and I have a very complicated past, but we were involved on and off for multiple years. At the beginning, it was very intense. I originally pursued him because the person I pursued him to be, I was 19, he was 24, he was cheating on his girlfriend. So is this before he was a big Viner? He was manipulative and dismissive. I did shitty things, but it was always in retaliation. He would toy with me, and I would I, being in a dark place, thought it was a game. We hurt others in the process. Part of me wants to share specific details with you, but he would know it was me if it were to get out. Towards the end on it, he had dwindled down into occasional conversation. He would make effort here and there to pull me back in. The last time we hooked up, I felt numb to the experience. I wouldn't call it sexual assault. It just happened because I didn't feel worth it to say no. After everything we've been through, I just wanted to get it over with so I could move on. I never felt like human to him. I'd like to tell myself he cared. This sounds like they were in an incredibly toxic relationship. Okay. Continuing what I shared previously on our first date, he was extremely disrespectful in many ways. When we were saying goodbye, we kissed. Then he proceeded to choke me without giving consent, which was an extreme red flag, but I was young at the time and wanted to believe he was a good guy. From then on, our relationship progressed into a weirdly quick pace. He guilt-tripped me into sleeping with him, and on the third day, how did he do that? On the third day, he told me I couldn't see anyone else. It was a lot like love bombing mixed with him treating me very poorly. Within the first month of dating, he introduced me to his parents and many of his friends. He would lie about my age to them, saying I was older than I was. There were two individuals who warned me about it at first, which made me want to break things off, but he would always rope me back in. I fell into a dark place and felt extremely isolated from my friends and family. I built up the courage to break with him. I finally built the break up with him, and when I did, he told me he was suicidal. Okay, that's really manipulative. We stopped talking for a while after until I wrote back in again after a few months. At this point, he used me entirely for sex and validation, taking advantage of the fact that I still had some residual feelings for him. The sex was always very creepy, too. Lots of emphasis on how young I was and pressured me to call him certain names, etc. On someone mentioning that he never treated them like a person, that was really resonating with me. I won't go into details for sake of keeping it as short as I can, but he made me feel like I was absolutely insane. It took me that would be considered gaslighting. It took me a very long time to understand how traumatic the relationship was and to actually heal from it. I genuinely believe Gabe is an abusive, manipulative narcissist. In hopes he tried to reflect on how he had hurt so many women, and I hope that. Okay, so as we keep going on here, I hope that no one has to experience with it. It seems like, yeah, I tend to believe that he was like a really abusive, manipulative, or he was a manipulative piece of shit. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm tired today. I didn't sleep a lot. So he seems to be very manipulative. He seems to have like a thing for calling girls young. Nothing illegal, just really gross. Hey, so I know you're probably getting flooded with messages, but I do have some information on Gabriel that goes back 2013. He constantly interact with and talk to minors that he knew were minors, including me back in 2013 on Twitter. Specifically, the Vampire Weekend fandom, and while I don't know if he did anything sexual and appropriate, he was definitely crossing a line. And yeah, I remember speaking on him multiple times when I was like 12 on Snapchat. He knew he was extremely... Yeah, so he was 23, so it's disgusting. This is his fans. No, this is his Snapchat. Okay. I can only take. What is this? Is this a poem? I can only. This is a poem. This is irrelevant. Okay. So some serious accusations. Obviously, a lot of gross ones. Thank God there's no porn on here. I just realized that the. Okay. Oh, there's like an only thing. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Good thing they didn't have any inappropriate messages on there. Okay, so far what I'm getting from this is that these are all allegations, so they're not proven true. However, excuse me, just having a fucking rough day. It seems like there seems to be a mixture of people who were truly and seriously traumatized by him, or maybe not seriously, but people who had very inappropriate or disgusting interactions with him, and other people who don't necessarily or didn't have those interactions. This person kind of reads to me as someone who didn't really have a truly inappropriate interaction with him, but is like they're overly charging it after the fact. It's a good thing that they came forward. It sounds like what happened is this person came forward about a weird experience that they had with Gabriel Gundacker, and then other people started flooding them with messages about that the predatory or borderline predatory experiences they had, and so they started to craft the narrative around that they had the same violation committed onto them.
Just racking my brain, thinking about the time I first moved to, and he...
That's the thing about stuff
because
like
they even
this,
say
right?
It wasn't trauma.
Like, that's why things like this are so weird. I'm not saying he's a predator.
Yeah, so like what I'm saying, like her experience is that he's not a
I'm
predator.
saying he's weird.
He's
and
weird.
I've heard that he's done very similar things to young girls just like me.
Yeah, you see like similar things, young girls just like me. So it seemed like there were younger girls that he had done worse to, but she's saying similar. It sounds like she's taking her experience that wasn't really that bad based on the way that she presented it and non-traumatic based on the words that she used, and then saying that like I have the same experience as the person who was traumatized by Gabriel or who was potentially traumatized by Gabriel. And so that's the thing that's the narrative that I tend to believe, at least some of those women, not so much this person, when it comes to their traumatic aspect. It seems like they're trying to like overemphasize like a scenario.
So it's hard because
She was like, it wasn't traumatic.
Especially traumatized.
Yeah, it wasn't a traumatic experience for them. So she's pulling a Trisha Pananis. All right. Also, I've been shadow banned due to this being a sensitive topic, so please interact and share if you can. Okay. This is from 3 hours ago.
If you've been following the Gabriel Gundacker situation that I and so many women have brought to light over the past few hours, let me start off by saying that over 500,000 people watched the video that I originally made of my experience with Gabriel. And then after sharing, my DMs were flooded with women who either had something similar or something more severe, or ex-girlfriends confirming that he was manipulative and abusive. And yeah, I can't let this go without him seeing some real consequences or more testimonies. So if you...
Is he even making content anymore? I feel like he's probably not going to hit consequences because it's a lot of like he said, she said, and it seemed like he didn't necessarily... Well, the age of, let's say, a 17-year-old thing is definitely disgusting. But I doubt he's going to get in any legal trouble because of how long it's been. He'll just be like, no, that never happened. You know what I'm
saying? We're involved with Gabriel Gundacker in any way, please. I want to share your story using my platform, whether or not you...
Yeah, that is a good point, though. There doesn't seem to be... One thing that is rather troubling, I'll say, is that of all these people, like somebody had a screenshot of his Snapchat. But that's like, okay. But we didn't have any screenshots of any messages. Now, obviously, people can delete stuff, blah, 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 blah. But you'd think at least one of the, what did we look through? 15, maybe? 10, 15 testimonies? One of them would have screenshots between the two of them of something that was inappropriate or something. Or any of them would even, or someone would claim, hey, I don't have screenshots because it was on Snapchat, right? You know what I mean? So, like, we don't have... Nobody's expressed this narrative of like, oh, I would have shown screenshots, but he made sure to pull us all to Snapchat, right? Because that's something that some people that have predatory tendencies do. They'll bring you to Snapchat because everything gets deleted and erased, and it makes it a lot easier to cover your trail. But we don't have anybody expressing that, and we don't have screenshots. I'm not saying it invalidates anything. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that it invalidates anything. I'm just saying that it's something to keep in mind for context.
Anonymous, I will respect that. And then I'm going to attach a few screenshots of women who have already come forward.
Well, right when I say a thing. Oh, wait. She might just be attaching the screenshots of the stuff that we already saw.
Our voices are heard as a collective. And solidarity is our greatest strength as women, as AFAB people, as victims. So,
see, that's what I'm saying. I don't think she's a victim by her own testimony. So I don't like it that she says like I don't like what she said.
Are heard screenshots of women who have already come forward to this because our voices are.
But she says our voices. So she's the victim. I don't think that she's a victim. It sounds like she had a weird experience that wasn't something that would be considered predatory, and then that triggered other people to come out and say, hey, I had a much worse experience, and then now she's like, well, I'm a victim too. That's what this feels like.
Are heard as a collective, and solidarity is our great.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing that she's trying to be a voice, but I don't like it that she's trying to be part of it. That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Strength, as women, as AFAB people, as victims. So, thank you.
And then, like, even there, like, she's identifying as AFAB. Like, does she have a trans identity, or is she doing that to try to? I would assume no, because she doesn't have her pronouns in the bio. Or is she just trying to personalize it? Like, oh, we're the blah, you know what I mean? I mean, if anything, the fact that she doesn't have her pronouns in the bio suggests to me that she doesn't even really care about that stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. All right, so this is a screenshot we haven't seen. No, it is. We have seen these already. We've seen all these screenshots. We looked at all these screenshots just now. We already went through all these, so we don't need to watch them again. Okay. This is from an hour ago.
I just wanted to also say, like, based on the overall air of the first video that I made, at the time of posting the first video, obviously I had no idea the extent of trauma that Gabriel had caused other women. I had heard things that he was, like, creepy, but, you know, there's only so much you can do with creepy. Like, if men, you know, if this 30-year-old man is, like, exclusively dating 20-year-olds, it's like, okay, that's pretty normal in Los Angeles.
Well, is that normal in LA? That's disgusting to me. What the fuck? Is that normal in LA? 30-year-olds dating 20-year-olds? Those 30-year-olds are fucking losers. This doesn't make him like a predator, but like, dude, 30-year-olds dating 20-year-olds? Like, what? Like, that's a normal? That's fucking nasty. I don't like that. Like, what kind of a loser are you to fucking date 20-year-olds at 30, like, consistently? Yeah, my type is a girl that has nothing going on in her life. Like, okay. What do you have to relate to that girl? I mean, like, listen, if you're a 30-year-old and you engage with 20-year-old like one time because you're like, oh, I don't know, whatever. But like, still weird. But for you to have a pattern of talking to 20-year-olds, like, what the fuck's the matter with you?
Rationalized for like literally 2.5 years.
Oh, I missed what she said because I was blabbering.
Pretty normal in Los Angeles, and so I rationalized for like literally 2.5 years what he did to me during our intimate situation, and then thinking it was funny, like, or convincing my
this is her just trying to make it seem like it was traumatic. He had you eat his butt, and then you went on more dates with him. Like, you're not the same as these other women who he seemed to have targeted in like a really weird way. You didn't even express to us that he said that, like, oh, made comments about your youth. I'm pretty sure you didn't say anything about that, when that was a staple in a lot of other girls' testimonies. So this idea that you were traumatized, even at all, even though you said that it wasn't a traumatic event, like, it's stop. It sounds like she's trying to ride the new age narrative of like, oh, I didn't realize how traumatic it was. No, it wasn't traumatic for you. You need to stop. Like, these types of, like, I didn't realize how traumatic it was, those will apply to people who were taken advantage of or sexually assaulted, and then they didn't realize that it was assault until later. This isn't what that is. So you have to stop. She's just trying to ride, like, the new age, like, she's trying to ride a very real, serious, and necessary narrative of, like, you know, explaining assault and having conversations about boundaries and consent, just to seem like she's more of a victim than she is.
Myself, it was funny as a survival skill. Very similarly, I did this when, after I was R-worded.
Wait, what? By him? Are you saying? Wait.
After myself, it was funny as a survival skill. Very similarly, I did this when, after I was R-worded.
Okay, so she had her own trauma.
Also, 3 years ago. And didn't really realize the extent of the trauma until really, like, getting into it.
But this doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, so they're saying that they have, like, a trauma from a different person. Okay, fine. And that they didn't originally understand that. Okay, fine. But now, years later, they're saying that, okay, this doesn't make sense. They're saying years later they finally realized what happened to them with the other person that assaulted them. They realized that was traumatic. But you didn't realize this was traumatic, this one, with Gabriel Gundacker, until after you expressed it online, and other people came forward with actual traumas, and you decided to make it. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I also would say that people that it just doesn't make any sense. This narrative doesn't make sense. It sounds like you're really just trying to make it seem like he did something to you that he didn't do to you, which he may have done to other people. But it makes me uncomfortable because it seems like you're trying to make yourself a victim in a scenario where there potentially are other real victims.
And now, being like an adult woman, 23, looking back at when I was freshly 20 and had known Gabriel.
Dude, see what I'm talking about? I was an adult woman at 23. First of all, you're not a fucking adult at 23, so shut up. Like, you guys are like, it takes it. I mean, I don't know, maybe girls, or I don't think so. I wasn't. Like, it took me until I was like 26 to become an adult. I feel like I went, but like the comparatively saying I was a fresh young adult at 20, but now I'm a mature 23. Like, what are you talking about? You're 3 years older. You're still probably ignorant as fuck. Like, I can look back at my 20-year-old self and go, yeah, I was a dumb fucking kid. But like, you're not 23 years old with this like profoundly intelligent and mature perspective on your fucking 20-year-old. This is what I'm talking about. What she's really just doing anything she can to elevate herself as a victim. Yeah, like, oh, I was 20. I was of age of consent. I was 2 years after the age of consent that I was a victim. Like, dude, you have to stop. You have to stop, because you're making this situation. You're diminishing the situation by trying to force yourself to be part of the situation.
It's so crazy the experience I've had now. And
I ask, when did you realize that you were assaulted by the other person? How old were you? How did you realize that it was actually a traumatic assault? What made you feel that way? Because now I would like to know, did you go to a therapist and they were able to help you go through that moment? Okay. So if let's say a therapist did help them get through that moment. Why did social media help you with this moment? Why wouldn't you go to a therapist and actually ask them about that?
It's insane to me how long I justified those actions, because it was so normal that if a man like kind of makes you do something you're not comfortable with during an instance where you already had given consent for other things, you just go along with it.
Listen, I understand generally what you're saying, but again, there was the two major questions. So she's roping back to where she was like giving him, she was giving him head, and then he pushed her head down to eat his ass, right? I understand what you're saying, that like it becomes one of those slippery slope things where people in the moment are more willing to go beyond their natural limits, or because of like the conditions of the situation. However, you going beyond what you would normally do doesn't necessarily make it some kind of an assault traumatic experience. You've already expressed it wasn't traumatic. And we asked two very important questions that you never expressed, even up until now. And that is, did you say no, or did you feel like if you said no that you would get hurt? Those are the two big, necessary, fundamental questions. And now that you've already given us tons of time, you've talked about it in depth, you've never expressed those feelings or emotions, we cannot call it some kind of an assault. You doing something for somebody you normally wouldn't do because they're famous doesn't mean that they took something from you. We have to understand that. That's your young ignorance, and I'm sorry for that. And did he take advantage of your young ignorance? Absolutely. So, or maybe. Maybe. I don't know if we can confirm it. Based on what you're saying, probably. But that doesn't make him a predator. It makes him a 30-year-old fuckboy, right? Based on her exclusive experience, not other people.
Like, that's so ingrained into the female psyche, I think. For clarification, I always knew that it made me severely uncomfortable, and I've thought about it so often.
You talking about how you didn't think about it for like a long time, and that the narrative's all over the place.
To the point where you just don't think about things that don't traumatize you as often as I've thought about this instance that I had with Gabriel.
Well, if it didn't traumatize you, then
Gabriel. But knowing it was wrong, sharing my story to just get it out, and then seeing so many women say, "Yeah, girl, that's like not okay and not normal." Like really, really put things into perspective.
Oh, there you go. That could be a factor. She might have been expressing a genuine story and then children online, not the people who reached out to her, might have said, that's not okay, that's assault. This is honestly a fundamental problem with TikTok and social media platforms, is that they're run by children that don't understand the nuances of life. And it's on both sides. You have like the SJWs and you have like the edgy little fucklords, okay? And they think things that are just not true. So if you're getting advice from random commenters who are most likely very young, because TikTok is an app for young people, you need to realize as an adult that you can't be like, oh, they're right. They're children. These are the same children that thought that Carson at 19 was grooming a 17-year-old girl. Okay? They don't understand life. And you need to acknowledge that. So if you're listening to them, like, go to your therapist. You said that, I mean, I assumed you had one. That's somebody you should talk to about trauma. Not 15-year-old kids on the internet that don't know anything.
Perspective, because I would say the same thing to someone that was coming forward with that sort of information, but I wasn't giving myself
you would have said that if... Wait. We're talking about her information. That doesn't make any sense. You told us that you thought it was a funny story and that you shared it with your friends, I'm pretty sure. So they didn't think that it was, like, predatory. They thought it was gross and weird. So why are you saying that if someone said that to you, that you would feel the same way? You tend to surround yourself with like-minded people. I doubt that you would have said that if somebody, like, had them, like, push their head down to their butt, you would have been like, oh my god, you have to go to the police. Like, I doubt that you would have actually had that interaction. It sounds like now, after you've gotten, like, positive feedback on what you're saying, you're trying to rope yourself into the narrative.
Courtesy of allowing myself to be uncomfortable or classify that as a trauma. So yeah.
Not a trauma. Okay. Overall, let me see if there's any more. I'll refresh. That was only an hour old. You never know. Yeah, so overall, here's what I have to say. It seems like there's definitely some information that could be embellished on with Gabriel Gundacker. Some of them seemed like they were valid claims, but this girl seems like she's over-exaggerating the point to try to make herself seem like a victim. They also said that they were shadow banned. They're not shadow banned. People probably just don't give a shit about what you're talking about anymore. I'm assuming some people which is unfortunate, but I'm assuming some people just probably think that you're hamming it up and they're just not paying attention to it. Because if they said, like, hey, listen, it sounds like there's inconsistencies in your story on your TikTok, you would, like, that's a trigger for people to, like, attack that person, because nuance doesn't exist, unfortunately. Like, you can't have, like, a reasonable perspective, because the people will generally go after those people, and some of those people are, like, invalidating of sexual assault, so I understand it, but I don't know. Seems like there's something that could be here, could be further investigated. Seems like she's trying to sensationalize her story to make her part of the victimhood, rather than somebody who really is calling it out, which is just a fine, noble act. And you really should have just focused on being this person that was able to use your platform to raise awareness, instead of, you know, try to jump on the bandwagon, because it does diminish those other people's experiences, because people are looking at this story through the lens of you. So if you're presenting some kind of misinformation, which I feel you do about your own experience, we look at it through you onto those experiences, and it diminishes those experiences by association. So I want you to understand that, like, that's the negative impact that you're having here.